It's time for Around the Ozarks Sports Scene, brought to you by Thompson Sales and the Pitch Pizza and Pub. Here's your host, Scott Puryear.
Welcome into another edition of Around the Ozarks Sports Scene. I am Scott Puryear. As always, big thank you to you for tuning in this week as we talk sports in the Ozarks. Big thanks to our sponsors, Thompson Sales and the Pitch Pizza and Pub, and we'll talk more about them at the end of the podcast. But really special treat for me tonight to have on one of my favorites back when I first started at the News Leader. I was the golf writer right out of college and got to talk a lot to Payne Stewart and the guy on the line with me today, Stan Utley, the former standout from West Plains, all Big 8 conference golfer at Mizzou and professional golfer, and now one of the most noted instructors in the country for his golf work with pros, amateurs, you name it. Stan's worked with them. Stan, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for getting a hold of me.
You betcha. Yeah.
Like I said, we're not 20 anymore.
Oh, no, we're not. And that's, I guess that's what makes it fun, is kind of the chronicling the journey from back in the days of I remember, and we were talking before the interview, that I remember coming down and there was a USGT event down at Point Royale in Branson. That was a mini tour, and you'd come over and played in that. I remember following you around there. And of course, then the Price Cutter Charity Championship at Highland Springs in 1990, which was the Ben Hogan Tour, I think, when it started out, wasn't it?
First couple years was a Hogan Tour. Yeah,
and you played in that a couple times, and eventually turned into one of the best teachers in the world, and kind of want to talk about that and kind of your journey to that point. But now you're living down in Fort Worth, Texas, teaching full time, correct?
I've made Fort Worth my home. I've been here about a year and a half.
Yeah, and that is the Shady Oaks Country Club. That's the home of Ben Hogan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah,
it's a pretty special place.
I bet. And you'd spent about the previous 20 years out in the Phoenix, Arizona area. What brought you to Fort Worth?
Well, I got offered an invitation to come to the club and be their director of instruction, and it just seemed like it was a good season of life move.
Absolutely. And you still do some instruction in Colorado, correct?
I've been at a club called Maroon Creek for the past 9 summers. So it's a good place to get away out of the Arizona heat and the Texas heat for a few months.
And that's in Aspen, is that correct?
That is true.
Yeah. Kind of the two clubs by comparison, are they pretty similar?
It's a little different. Obviously, the club in Colorado is a Fazio design on the side of a mountain. The club here in Texas is a little older style, but it did get a facelift by Jeff Ogilvy. Redid the greens and complexes about 5 years ago, and it's a fun course to play. Well, this course has all kinds of history, and the other course is strictly just a club for the members.
And out in Arizona, where were you there for the majority of the time?
I was at Greyhawk Golf Club, which is a very high-end daily fee facility. I was there 22 years.
22 years. Wow. That's hard to uproot yourself in at that point, or I guess you guys are empty nesters and that made it a little easier, didn't it?
Not really. It's tough when you leave your home, but Texas is growing on us. We're doing better all the time.
Do you play much anymore?
I play with my students. I do not compete.
And when you go out, and those are playing lessons, basically, right?
Often.
Yeah. How many students now do you see, or kind of in over the course of a year? Is it a pretty select group? Talk about your clientele.
That I should have an answer to that. I really don't. I give lots of days. I would see in Arizona, I might see only 2 people a day. Because people would fly in and spend 2 or 3 hour sessions with me working on short game or all their game. At the clubs I'm at now, I might give 5 or 6 1-hour lessons, or a combination of hour lesson or 2-hour playing lesson, and it varies, but I don't take many days off.
Well, and of course, you become one of the most noted short game experts in the game. Working with pros. I was reading up on some of the bio stuff. Everybody from Sergio Garcia to Charles Barkley. You've worked with them. Is it mostly short game? Do you specialize in that, or do you now do pretty much the whole game?
Well, I teach all aspects of golf now, but the transition period really came a little bit by accident. I like to give my wife a lot of credit because I was playing what we call the Corn Ferry Tour now a lot. People were always asking me for help, and one day she decided that her and the kids were waiting on me to get through giving God a lesson that I needed to beat the next day. And they kind of shared they'd wait on me if I was practicing, and they'd wait on me if I was teaching, as long as that guy was paying me for a lesson. And it was funny when I started telling guys they had to pay, guys that weren't my buddies started asking for help because they felt like they were not imposing.
Yeah.
But the true transition, I give all the credit, and the change in my life happened when Jay Haas asked for a tip. It was in 2001. He had struggled in the year 2000. Really, it's the first time he had a hard time keeping his status on the tour as a regular member. And he asked for a putting tip. And I was at his brother-in-law's place in Greenville, South Carolina. Dillard Pruitt's an old friend of mine. And Jay, we were at a barbecue, and Jay asked for a look and a tip on putting. And next thing I knew, he called me a few days later, and probably a month or two went by before I actually saw him hit putts on a green. And the next day he made 8 birdies in the Milwaukee PGA Tour event, and he kind of never looked back.
And then
he was in his mid 40s, and by the time he was 50, he had been in the top 30 in the world the previous 2 or 3 years, and he made the Ryder Cup at 50 years old. So if you can imagine, everybody's fired up about the Ryder Cup this week. Well, Jay Haas played at 50 years old.
That's amazing.
And that's how good he did. And I don't have any estimation how many times he's won on the Champions Tour, but he's got the all-time record for the most cuts anybody's ever made on the PGA Tour.
Wow. And once you kind of fixed him, I'm sure it spread like wildfire from there, didn't it?
He was nice enough to tell people I helped him, and his buddies and my peers started asking, and then it wasn't too long I got some calls from some European guys. I worked with Graham McDowell. I worked with Paul McGinley, Darren Clark. That kind of led into Sergio, and obviously a bunch of guys from our regular tour were curious and would ask for help. And, the fun thing for me was I felt like I was just sharing what Mr. Lanning gave me.
Yeah.
I don't know. People these days might not remember who Ken Lanning was, but I grew up in West Plains, and all the little towns in South Central Missouri, we usually had 9-hole courses, but we didn't all have golf pros. And Mr. Lanning was a gentleman that really, he made a living in real estate, but he donated his life to help kids play better golf. And at 13 years old, he offered to be my mentor, and he coached me well into past college and into professional golf.
And I know his junior tournament was a must play for juniors for years and years up there in Rolla, wasn't it? The tournament?
It was in Rolla.
Yeah.
But he would show up in Mountain Grove, Willow Springs, all the little tournaments. He would just show up in the afternoon and help you if you wanted some help with your game.
Of course, people that, our age remember also your brother, John Utley, a little younger and came along and had a great career, led West Plains to a state championship, won a state championship in high school, went on to play at Mizzou like big brother. How did you guys get into golf down in West Plains? When we drive to Memphis or Florida, we drive by West Plains Country Club there on the road, and it always just looks so pristine and really pretty right there. And is that where you guys just dropped off there as kids at an early age and play all day? Or how did that
my parents grew up in Thayer.
Okay.
And so I was born in Thayer. John was born. We still live there. And we lived out on a little farm and showed horses. And my dad rode the train from Thayer to Memphis. Like the guys in Springfield ride the train and get off in Thayer and ride back on the train from Thayer to Springfield. So he rode the train Thayer to Memphis. And at about 30 years old, the railroad guys talked him into going to West Plains and trying to play golf. And he really got hooked. And so he got so hooked that when I was ready to start the 6th grade at 12 years old, we moved 27 miles from there to West Plains.
Wow.
And in the 6th grade class, there were 3 other guys, Gates Paris, John Richards, and Craig Linson, who all played golf. And I made a foursome, and we were buddies from the 6th grade right through high school, and we had a good run in high school golf ourselves. But we kind of phased out of the horses and went full-time into golf. And it was really when I was 14 that my dad kind of said, okay, we'll see how good you are. And we drove to Columbia to play the state junior. And I think it was Matt Woods beat me, and I got second in the 14-year-old age group. And from then on, my dad and mom were committed to let me do all that I wanted to do is pursuit of golf.
That's awesome. Did you play anything else at West Plains, or did you focus on golf the whole time?
Well, basketball was my true love. I played football, basketball, and baseball. I gave up football after the 9th grade. Baseball I gave up at about 15, and then I played basketball all the way through high school. I like to say I peaked in about the 8th grade, but I loved it.
Went to Mizzou, had a great career there with the Tigers. Did it come down to Mizzou and somebody else, or were you always bound to be a Tiger?
Well, honestly, I didn't get recruited to play college golf other than Missouri.
Really?
I talked to a couple small schools, but I only played a couple times outside of the state, and I didn't get a call from anybody else. But Coach Poe was the pro at Country Club Missouri. He really had a full-time job, and he was committed to bringing in Missouri kids. So he didn't recruit anybody outside of Missouri. And he ran a couple tournaments at Country Club Missouri, the Phil Cotton and the Missouri Open. So all of us that were decent junior players would end up playing that tournament in the state high school or the state championship at A. Augustin. And so he knew who the players were, and he just invited me to come up and join the team after I graduated high school in 1980.
Wow. You know, Stan, that era, it was my first era of golf in the 80s, but, you know, after you, there were so many really good young golfers that came through our area, you know, and I just think of the Alan Rosens and Raleigh Hurst and, you know, Wayne Fredericks and Chuck Greens and all these guys. And, you know, even later, you know, we had Antonio Serrano and Corey Bowman and guys that tried to make it professionally and were really good and just didn't have what it took to take that next step. And I guess my question is, you live that life. How hard is it to make it and make a living as a player back then and then comparable to today?
Well, I ask people sometimes, are you in the top 200 in the world at your craft? And some people can say yes, and some people can't say that. But
yeah, to
stay successful at golf, you really need to be in that group. And I was there for a very short time. I had a huge break in my career to get me on the PGA Tour, because typically back then you had to go through 3 tournaments in the fall, and they weeded people down from, say, 4,000 or 5,000 people to 50. And I came very close at getting in that group 2 or 3 times, but didn't make it. I actually got in a PGA Tour event on an exemption, and I got on tour because I won a tournament before I got on tour.
Yeah, that
was my entry into the entry into the PGA Tour was by winning on Sunday. And you know, that's a rare thing, and I'm grateful for that happening to me.
That was Chattanooga, wasn't it, in 1989?
That's correct.
Yeah, and then of course, you know, you played we mentioned the Price Cutter event a few times. You were number 3 on the nationwide money list, I believe, in '93. When you played the tour that's been coming to Springfield, unfortunately, it looks like it's going to be done. How good were those guys you were playing against? I mean, what was keeping them from getting to that PGA Tour top 150, 200 status?
Well, I think it was always very close.
Yeah.
I think the top 40 guys in the world are, you know, you don't know where to break that. Do you break it at 30? Do you break it at 50? Do you break it at 60? But they're pretty elite. And then you've got a lot of guys that are pretty close. So guys that played on what we call the Corn Ferry Tour now, they're close. Doesn't mean they're far away. They're just looking for a break or a run or a hot streak. And sometimes that's all it takes to get out there and get your momentum.
From a skill standpoint, what is the difference between Scotty Scheffler and number 120 on the money list?
There's a lot of difference. There's a lot of difference between him and the number 4 guy.
Yeah. Wow.
Name somebody else. Like,
yeah, he's a freak of nature, isn't he, out there right now?
He has all the skills.
Yeah. But those guys that are all, I guess bunched up together, is it mental? Is it something in their swings, or is it a combination of all the above?
It's just a tiny bit here and there.
Is it?
So very few people have the whole package. So usually you have your strengths and some weaknesses, and there's a few players that you can't find many weaknesses. I think a big piece of it is managing how you pursue your weakness and how you maintain your strength. There's lots of mental to it. Mental has a lot more to do than just focusing on the course. Mental has to do with dealing with life.
You were a phenomenal short game guy, obviously, because you spawned a different career in teaching it. What was length the one thing that you think held you back from maybe breaking through in that PGA Tour career?
It was definitely a weakness, because particularly now, the speed the guys play at is incredible. But I couldn't run fast. I couldn't jump high. I couldn't swing very fast. And so, in my day, sometimes I have somebody look up my stats. I barely drove at 250 yards on average.
Yeah.
Now they're driving at 320. There's a lot of difference in 70 yards on what shot you're hitting into the green.
Yeah, that I think we talked earlier before the interview, but the Price Cutter Charity Championship. I mean, I remember when you and guys like Olin Brown and Jeff Cook and the guys the early years, you'd go out to Highland and it might take 13, 14 under to win the tournament. Now it's 25 to 30 under. Is that a technology thing in golf? Is it a length thing? Are guys just better? And if so, now why?
A couple things. The clubs are built in a way that they're more forgiving. The players that are growing up today, when they're little bitty players, they're thinking about flying at 300 yards. In my era, people didn't think about that.
Yeah. And
the clubs weren't very forgiving. So if you swung at a speed that you could hit it that far, you probably couldn't hit the course. And, I compare it to the 4-minute mile. It was a long time before they broke that number. Now everybody does.
Yeah.
And so there's an element of just the athlete sees himself getting it done and he goes and does it. The training aspect of conditioning and getting a more pure swing quick in golf is easier because coaching is so good. Technology is measuring everything. But the athletes are getting faster. They're getting faster at everything.
It does that. I guess the course is set up for going low now. Does that eliminate a lot of guys right off the bat? Because not everybody can go shoot 8, 10 under, and be in contention. Is that something that I think that always kind of hampered this term a little bit, that there were some guys that teed it up and said, I can't shoot 8 under for, 3 or 4 days, that type of deal.
Yeah. But that guy, if he's good enough to be out there, he probably could. He might not if the conditions are a certain way, but they're all really good. But, I think one of the reasons you see the scoring change in Springfield is you score when you have a wedge into the green. Mm-hmm. Like you don't really score hitting 6 irons into the green. And the guys have gotten so long, there's no holes that aren't a wedge. And the par fives they're hitting 7 irons of par fives instead of woods. And that's what really brings the scoring down.
Is that why you were so good with the short game? Because you knew you had to have it back in your day to be able to compete and make checks?
Well, it's interesting. I still credit the fact that Mr. Lanning, and he sent me to Jim Tom Blair in St. Louis. He sent me to Jim Parkins in Poplar Bluff. All these gentlemen were champion amateur golfers. And they taught me concepts that were so good and so fundamental that I had a great technique. I think because I love basketball, like I tell people sometimes, when I was 10 or 11 years old, just being kind of sneaky competitive, I learned how to shoot left-handed. And if you're a 10-year-old that can make a left-handed layup, you can win every horse game.
Yeah.
Because the other kids might not put out the effort. I played a whole lot of ping pong. Craig Linson and I played ping pong to no end. Our parents would play cards and we'd be in the basement playing ping pong. And sometimes we'd play left-handed. And just the concept of hand-eye coordination and understanding spin and English on a golf ball, I just applied that to short game. And then one other big factor was in West Plains, they changed the course from 9 to 18 about my freshman year in high school. And when they changed the routing and they put a range in, they left one of the greens. So all the way through high school and college, I hit my wedge shots into a real surface. And that's totally different than hitting a wedge down a driving range. I got to watch my ball spin, bite, kick, bounce, run. I could make it do it jumping around on the green, whatever I wanted to. And Mr. Lanning said, if you can manage the first bounce, or he said the only way to master the short game is to master the first bounce. And it's been pretty fun, particularly as I've learned more and more and technology comes along and measures. The more they measure, they keep proving what Mr. Lanning said was correct. I'll give you one example. So people learn golf and they're told to accelerate through the putter. Mm-hmm. And if people watching this podcast only remember one thing, when you watch golf on TV, watch how short the putter follows through for all these good players. Good players have short follow throughs. Well, he had this saying, he would say, putt with dead strength. And when I become a coach, I thought I need to figure that out. And as my son went and got an engineering degree, I hung out with a golf geek professor at his university. And I learned about a pendulum. And a pendulum swings because of gravity. And at the bottom of a pendulum, the acceleration rate is 0. Maximum speed, 0 acceleration on the object swinging at the bottom of a pendulum. Well, that's what dead strength is. That's using gravity to follow the putter head. And if you run into a golf ball sitting still at 0 acceleration, the follow through will always be shorter than the backswing. And so it's interesting. They taught me to do that. They didn't explain it. They got me to do it. It worked. And most great putters have always done that. I don't think they always knew how or why, but now that we can measure it, almost everybody knows it. And it's been ironic that several things that do with short game, I felt like I was on an island 25 years ago when I was talking about it. Now it becomes the norm. Just recently, people have started aiming their feet to the right in the bunker. Well, Tom Pernice grew up in Kansas City and went to UCLA. Well, he got to hang out with Mac O'Grady and Seve Ballesteros. And in 1982 or 3, he came back from UCLA after being with Seve and getting a bunker lesson and gave me a sand lesson at A. Augustin during the Missouri Open while I was still in college. Well, I'm still telling what he told me in 1983. Now the world is caught up and they started telling people instead of aiming left and opening the face, to aim to their feet to the right. And it's funny, even watching commercials, Tiger Woods sometimes talks about he hits draws out of the bunkers. And it's just fascinating that the more they measure, the more they keep catching up with Mr. Lanning and Mr. Parkins and Jim Tom Blair.
Wow. You look at that list of that Golf Digest puts out of the top 50 golf teachers, instructors. Are you all in your mind a little different, or are the concepts pretty much the same with the approach? Like is your short game approach, you think, with people that come for lesson the same as the other guys in the top 50, or do y'all have your own little different approaches to it?
Well, I would say it's not unusual that we tell it different. Mostly we're looking for very similar results and actions, but we could actually like the same action and think it's told totally different. And I had a student one time that he works with Mike Bender, and Mike Bender's famous for being Zach Johnson's coach. And he would say, well, Bender tells it opposite of you. And one day I said, come over and watch me hit some chips and video and go back and study and see if I do what Mike says. And so he videoed me hitting about 10 shots. He went home. He called me 30 minutes later. He said, you do just what Mike said. I said, so the truth is we're telling it different, but we're looking for the same results, and you hadn't done either one. And now my student then and my friend is a great golf coach. So he figured out how to coach it better, and he figured out how to do it.
You know, and we touched on it earlier, but you worked with a lot of pros. But how did you get hooked up with Charles Barkley? Tell us that story.
So I become friends with Tom Lehman years ago, and he has a charity event there in Phoenix. It's more of a celebrity event than it is a golf pro event. So Charles was there, and I had maybe crossed paths with Charles a couple times in the past. I never got to know him. I'd just shaken his hand. He's an incredibly friendly guy. So this was maybe coming up on 6 years ago. I can't believe that, but I said, Charles, why don't you let me watch you hit some balls? He's like, I've had everybody watch me hit balls. I said, it wouldn't hurt to have one more then. And I literally gave him one tip. He took that tip and he worked really hard. And that was around Thanksgiving 6 years ago. By Christmas or his New Year's, I went to his New Year's Eve party. All his buddies come up and hug me. And they said, he's starting to like golf again. And we need him to like golf because he loves golf, but he got so bad he wouldn't play. And I just ran into him the other day in Phoenix, and he's playing good. He's having so much fun. He just lost 65 pounds too. He looks incredible.
Does he still have that loop in his swing, or do you get rid of that?
He swings good. He smashes it. He's long.
Did you get the loop out, or did somebody else get the loop?
Well, I told him what to do, and he went to work on it.
Uh-huh.
So I gave him the right recipe, and it was pretty simple. But other people had worked with him for a lot, and it didn't go away. And I honestly didn't spend very many sessions with him. He just put in the work, and it happened to be the right thing that he needed.
Well, the people can learn a lot more at standout.com. I see you even can apply for lessons there. You do give lessons to the public in addition to your membership.
I give non-member lessons at Shady Oaks a day or two a week. Mostly I teach the members, but when I'm out in Colorado in the summer, that doesn't work like that. But I also do a lot of clinics. So spring and fall, I travel and do clinics away. And like I was just in California all last week. I was at 3 different clubs in California. In January, I'll be in Florida a bunch, in Arizona. So they can find me on the road sometimes as well.
And corporate outings too. I think you've done some of those.
I still do a few of those.
Okay. Well, and I noticed on your website, you've got some products that, like the Orange Whip, Swing Speed Putting Arc, and Flight Deck. Did you invent those? Kind of tell us about that side.
Orange Whip is, for a long time, was the #1 training aid in golf. And the fellow that Jim Hackenberg that created that product came for chipping lessons, and he brought me a putter that had a similar floppy shaft on it. I took the putter and had the head cut off and put a wedge on it. So the next time he come back for a lesson, I showed him the Orange Whip wedge, and then that became a product. So it's got my name on it. That's kind of fun. But the swing speeds putting arc was something that I actually kind of came up with some other people's math and applied it in a little different way. And I feel like it's a simple way for people to understand how to let gravity follow the putter the right amount, to have the ball be impacted at a different speed. And obviously, if you hit it solid at different speeds, it has more energy to go less or farther.
Tiger in his prime or Scotty in his prime? Who you got?
It'd be a good battle.
What are the strengths of both of them? Are they similar?
They're very similar. They have the will to win, and they hate losing.
Do you watch a lot of golf now still, professional?
I've never watched a lot of golf.
Okay.
I'd rather go play or teach.
Yeah.
I watch some, but not tons.
Tell us about your family. Get us caught up on that.
Well, my wife Elena we just celebrated 39 years of marriage.
Wow.
Our daughter's 30, married, and had her first grandbaby in January, and our son's 28. He's scheduled to get married in March. So we're all doing good. And we've covered a lot of the country.
Did the kids play golf?
They did. My daughter played in high school, and it wasn't a priority. She knows how to swing, and people ask her if she plays golf. She tells them she could if she wanted to. My son, he played high school golf. He did not play in college. Kind of played what's called intramural golf. So they had a traveling intramural team. He went to college at Cal Poly and got an engineering degree out in California. But he works hard at his game. He's played a couple three state championships, the Arizona State Amateur and the Washington State Amateur a couple times. But last weekend, a week ago, he played in the Mid Amateur in Arizona. So he played a USGA event, and I got to fly in and caddy for him, and it was really a special time that, he got to put his game up to a test, and he figured out what he needed to work on for next time. And it was very exciting for me to watch him compete at a high level.
That's awesome. What about John now? Where's John Utley, and does he still play a little bit?
John plays a little bit. He mostly coaches people golf. He's a great golf instructor. He's in Columbia, Missouri still. He was a college coach for several years at Columbia College, and so he's doing really good.
Well, Stan, always a pleasure to catch up with you. It's been too long. I just loved working with you back in the day, and very happy for the success you've had staying in golf. Did you ever see any path that took you out or away from the game at any point in your life?
Not at all. It was interesting that I dreamed about being a professional athlete. Basketball did not work out. So at my speed, I turned to golfer, and I had great mentors, but Mr. Lanning was always a wise person. He shared one thing with me one day. He said, "You'll be a fine golfer, but someday you'll be a great coach." And it's just interesting how you sometimes live out a blessing that somebody speaks over you. And I think that's why it's important how we use our words, especially with our kids, because when we bless them with a big dream, sometimes it turns out great.
Absolutely. Well, Stan, thanks for your time. Best wishes to you and the family, and let's catch up again, okay?
All right. Thank you, Scott.
You bet. Stan Utley, always a class act, and just a guy, like I said, I started my career as a sports writer in the mid-'80s, and he was already on the scene and pushing toward that pro career, and nothing but class the entire time. Got to work with him. Happy for him and his family, and that golf has become still a big part of his life, as you probably knew it would be. Big thanks again to our sponsors, the Pitch Pizza and Pub. They're located in the Southern Hills Shopping Center off East Sunshine. It's your home for great pizzas, for appetizers, calzones. The salads are all good. Frosty cold beverages for lunch or dinner. And if you need a meeting place, give Brian Bevel and his staff a call. They'll take care of you there at the Pitch Pizza and Pub. And also Thompson Sales, located at 1555 East Independence in South Springfield. The Thompson boys have been dealing since 1919. They're your home for the largest selection of Cadillac, Buick, and GMC cars and trucks, new and used. And they got a great service department over at Thompson's to take care of you for all your needs to keep that vehicle running. Big thanks to Thompson's. And remember, the Thompson boys are dealing. That's going to do it for this week. Again, thanks for tuning in. Our big thanks to Stan Utley for taking the time to join us and on the podcast. Wish him the best, and we will see you next week on Around the Ozarks Sports Scene.